The sky above was orange and cracked like dry clay. The jungle below moved like it was breathing. Strange creatures hissed between thick vines, and old bones lay hidden in the moss. It was not a place for mistakes, but Velora, the proud alien warrior, didn't believe in fear. She believed in strength, pride, and herself. Jack stood beside her, a human dressed in dusty armor and carrying a scanner that buzzed with warning. He looked at the path ahead, the broken stones, the overgrown ruins, the air that shimmered with silent danger. "I wouldn't go that way," Jack said calmly. "The old traps are still active." Velora laughed, flipping her long silver hair over her shoulder. "You humans see ghosts everywhere," she said with a smirk. "But I don't run from rocks and vines." Jack didn't smile. He had seen what these ruins could do. He had watched trained soldiers vanish in seconds, screaming into hidden pits or eaten by machines lost to time. "I'm serious," he said again. "One wrong step and you won't have time to regret it." She narrowed her eyes, insulted by his warning. "I am Velora of the Stormclaw," she said. "I don't need a human's help." And with that, she stepped forward into the jungle path. Leaving Jack behind, he sighed and didn't follow. Not yet. Instead, he adjusted his scanner and checked the readings. Something was wrong. The energy spikes were too high. The ground itself seemed to hum with hunger. Velora moved fast. Her armor shining under the dim jungle light, she walked like a queen, back straight, chin high, eyes sharp. She didn't see the thin wire under her boot. She didn't hear the click, but Jack did. Snap suddenly. The ground beneath Velora cracked open like a mouth. She shouted, reaching out, but the earth swallowed her in one loud breath. Then silence. Jack ran, sliding to the edge of the pit. He looked down, and there she was, impaled, but not deeply. Her leg caught on a sharp metal bone spike. Blood dripped slowly, her pride bleeding faster than her body. "You okay?" Jack called, already pulling out rope. Velora gritted her teeth, her voice low. "Don't you dare laugh," she growled. "I'm not," Jack said, tying the rope to a nearby tree. "But I did warn you." Minutes later, he lowered himself into the trap. The walls were smooth, no way to climb. He wrapped her wound quickly and gently. She hissed at his touch, not from pain but from shame. "I could have handled it," she whispered. "Sure," Jack replied, not arguing. "But now you don't have to." He helped her climb, pushing her up first, then hoisting himself with effort. The jungle didn't stay quiet. Strange screeches echoed from deep within. Something had heard the trap snap, and now it was coming. Jack helped her limp toward cover, but she kept pulling away. "Don't treat me like I'm weak," she spat. "I'm treating you like someone I don't want to see dead," he answered calmly. Velora said nothing after that. The pain in her legs slowed her down, but not as much as the burning in her pride. She had mocked him, and now he was saving her, again and again. This human kept showing her something she didn't understand, kindness mixed with strength. As they found a resting spot under a half-broken canopy, Jack checked his scanner. The signals were worse. Movement in every direction, like the jungle itself had awakened. Velora leaned against a tree, breathing heavily, trying not to show the pain. "Is something wrong?" she asked. Jack looked around, eyes sharp now, voice low. "Yes," he said. "We triggered something, and it's not happy." "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice tense. "I mean," Jack said, scanning the dark trees, "we're not alone anymore." Suddenly, the leaves rustled behind them. Glowing yellow eyes appeared in the shadows, watching, blinking slowly, not one, not two, but dozens. Jack raised his weapon, aiming toward the dark. Velora forced herself to stand, her injured leg shaking. They were surrounded, and they both knew it. "You still don't need a human's help?" Jack whispered, half joking. Velora clenched her jaw, looking at the creatures closing in. She didn't answer, but she stepped closer to him. Just a little. For the first time, not out of pride, but out of fear. The air turned cold, the night thick with danger, and the jungle waited to see who would survive. The jungle was silent for a moment, too silent. Like even the air had stopped moving. Jack stood in front of Velora, his weapon raised. Eyes locked on the glowing shapes in the dark. Velora's leg was still bleeding, but she stood tall. Her pride holding her up more than her muscles. The creatures didn't move. They only watched, their yellow eyes floating like cold stars in the night. Jack didn't blink. He whispered, "Don't move. Don't breathe too loud," Velora whispered. "Back. What are they?" "Jungle phantoms," he said. "They don't like light." With one quick move, Jack threw a flare into the air. The red light burst open like a fireball and lit up the trees. The creatures hissed and scattered into the shadows, their long limbs twisting unnaturally, but they didn't run far. Just enough to wait in the dark again. Jack helped Velora lean on him. She didn't like it, but her leg throbbed with pain. They moved quickly toward an old stone path, half buried by vines. The jungle behind them creaked and shifted. The phantoms were following, quiet and slow. "We can't outrun them," Jack said. "But there's a clearing up ahead with metal ground." "What does that mean?" she asked. "It means they can't touch us there." Velora limped faster, pushing through the branches with gritted teeth. Her pride still burned from her fall, but fear now mixed with her anger. She had trained for war, for honor, for battle, but this was different. This jungle didn't care about titles or ranks. It only wanted to consume. They reached the clearing, and as soon as their feet touched the rusted metal beneath the dirt, Jack activated a signal beacon from his belt. A soft hum filled the air, and a blue circle of light spread out around them. The phantoms stopped at the edge, hissing like smoke, but didn't cross. They circled for a while, and then slowly vanished into the dark again. Velora dropped to her knees, breathing hard. She hated the weakness in her body, hated the kindness in Jack's eyes even more. He sat beside her, pulled out a small medical kit, and reached for her leg. She tried to pull away, but her hands trembled. He said nothing and just began to clean the wound gently. "You should have let me rot in that trap," she muttered. Jack glanced at her. "Why?" "Because you were wrong?" She looked away. "Because I was stupid." He smiled slightly. "Even smart people fall in holes." Velora stared at him for a moment, unsure if he was mocking her or being kind. She realized she didn't know how to tell the difference when it came to humans. They were strange, soft but sharp, weak but unbreakable. She had heard they were dangerous, unpredictable, always acting from emotion, but now she wondered if maybe that was their strength, not their flaw. A sound echoed again, this time deeper, not like the phantoms. Jack stood up fast and grabbed his scanner. He cursed under his breath. Velora stood too, her body screaming in pain but her warrior spirit refusing to sit. "What now?" she asked, voice hard again. "There's something under us," Jack said, pointing to the scanner. "It's moving." "The metal ground?" she asked. He nodded. "Old tech, human-made, maybe military, maybe worse." Before she could answer, the ground vibrated, just a little at first, then stronger. A loud metallic clang echoed under their feet. The clearing they thought was safe began to glow in thin lines, forming a circle. Jack grabbed her arm. "Move!" But it was too late. The ground opened again, not as a trap, but as a door. They fell together, sliding down a narrow metal chute. Lights flashed past them, red and blue and white. Then they landed hard on a cold surface, winded but alive. They were now inside something ancient, something buried, something not meant to be found. The walls were smooth and humming, covered in strange symbols that pulsed like a heartbeat. Velora touched one gently, and it lit up under her fingers. Jack's face turned pale. "Don't do that." "Why?" she asked. "Because this place was locked for a reason." From the far side of the room, a shape began to rise from the floor. Metal and bone twisted together. A machine with arms like swords and eyes that glowed red. Jack raised his weapon. Slowly, Velora stepped beside him, her pride forgotten now. Only survival remained, and this time, she didn't push his hand away. She whispered, Whatever happens, we fight together. Jack nodded once. The machine took a step forward, its voice crackling through old speakers. Target detected, terminate. The fight had only just begun. The machine didn't charge, not at first. It just stood there, staring with glowing red eyes as if scanning every breath they took. Jack didn't move, finger tight on the trigger. Velora's hands were ready too, trembling from blood loss, but firm with purpose. They both knew one wrong move would end them. The silence was worse than battle. The air inside the room felt heavy, filled with ancient fear and something colder than metal. Then, slowly, the machine raised its arm and a blade unfolded with a hiss. Its voice echoed again, crackling like dead air. Biological intruders, threat level unknown, commencing elimination. Jack fired first. A sharp blue beam of light, cutting across the space. The machine didn't even flinch, its armor absorbing the hit like rain on steel. Velora moved next, grabbing a loose pipe from the floor and throwing it. It bounced off the machine's head and clanged to the ground. Uselessly, but it bought them a second, just enough. Run! Jack shouted, and they did. They dashed down the only open corridor, metal walls lit with red warnings as the machine followed. It moved fast, faster than anything that size should move. Its legs were like claws, and every step sent a loud thud. Echoing behind them, Velora limped, but she didn't fall. She had never run from a fight before. But this wasn't a fight, it was death walking on two legs. Jack dragged her through a turning hall, and a door slammed shut behind them. The machine's blade struck just as the door sealed, sending sparks flying into the dark. Inside the next chamber, the lights were dim and flickering. Old consoles blinked slowly, untouched for what looked like centuries. Jack checked his scanner, breath heavy. This was a human research station, he said. Buried under alien jungle. Velora leaned against the wall, her voice low. Your kind built that thing? Jack nodded. Or something like us did, before the fall. They both looked around, trying to think, trying to breathe. There were signs of battle here, scorch marks on walls, melted doors, and skeletons covered in dust. Something went wrong, Jack said, walking toward the console. Maybe that thing killed everyone. Velora replied, voice cold. Or maybe, Jack whispered, it was left behind on purpose. The console sparked as he touched it, and a screen came to life. A grainy image appeared, an old human officer speaking into a camera, his voice shaking. If you're seeing this, he said, then the failsafe failed. The eye is awake again. Leave this place immediately. Then the screen went dark. Velora turned toward Jack, her pride stripped away completely now. Why did you come here? She asked. Jack didn't look at her. Because someone had to warn people like you. She lowered her eyes, ashamed for the first time. I should have listened, she said, barely louder than a whisper. Before Jack could respond, a crashing sound echoed through the walls. The machine was cutting through the door. Slow but steady, they had minutes, maybe less. Jack ran his hands over the console again, looking for anything, an exit, a trap, a weapon. One panel blinked green, labeled Armory. This way, he said, pulling her toward a hidden door. Behind the console, they entered a small room filled with old weapons, most covered in dust, some broken. Jack grabbed the pulse rifle and tossed a blaster toward Velora. She caught it, checked the charge, and gave a nod. I don't know how to thank you, she said. Don't. Jack replied, just help me survive. They positioned themselves near the entrance. Weapons aimed, hearts pounding. The cutting sound stopped, replaced by silence again. Then came the screech of metal, and the door exploded open. The machine stepped through the smoke, parts of its body sparking from damage. Its voice was deeper now, glitching. Final warning, surrender or be erased. Jack smiled without humor. We don't do surrender. Velora raised her weapon beside him. This time she didn't step in front of Jack. This time she stood with him, shoulder to shoulder. Whatever happened next, They would face it together, and this time, the machine wasn't just facing a wounded alien and a cautious human. It was facing two warriors, united by pain, fear, and the will to live. Asterisk. The first shot missed. The second hit the machine's shoulder, burning a hole in its armor. It didn't scream, didn't flinch, didn't stop. It just kept walking through the smoke like a nightmare built from steel and silence. Velora fired again, her blaster heating in her grip. Jack rolled to the side and hit a switch near the wall, hoping it might trigger some old defense system. Nothing happened, just a loud buzz and a cloud of dust falling from the ceiling. The machine raised one of its arms, and a burst of red energy flashed across the room. It struck near Jack's feet, exploding the floor into fire and smoke. Velora jumped forward, covering him without thinking. The blast singed her arm, but she didn't stop firing. She didn't think about pride, or rank, or being seen as weak. She only thought about survival, and strangely, about him, the human who kept saving her, and never once asked for anything in return. Jack crawled behind a metal crate and threw her a spare energy cell. She caught it, reloaded fast and nodded. The machine stepped closer, now missing part of its faceplate, wires sparking where a red eye used to be. "You are not authorized to exist," it said in a voice that shook. "The room," Jack whispered. "We need to lure it into the old reactor chamber," Velora asked. "What's in there?" He said, "Power cells and one bad idea." They moved together, side by side, dodging blast fire and broken debris. The hallway shook as the machine followed, cutting through anything in its way. Doors melted, pipes burst, lights flickered. Like they were gasping for air. The reactor room was massive and round, glowing with a sick green light. Old tech hummed like it was dreaming of the past. Jack ran to the far console and began pressing keys, his fingers shaking but fast. Velora stood near the doorway, breathing hard, blaster up, waiting. The machine entered slowly, scanning everything. "Containment unstable," it said. "Power core detected. Detonation risk high." Jack smiled. "Exactly." He set a charge near the power cells, set the timer for 10 seconds, and shouted, "Now!" Velora fired at the machine's legs, slowing it down. Jack grabbed her hand and pulled her toward the maintenance hatch. They dove in just as the room exploded behind them. The fire roared like a beast, and the machine screamed for the first time. The tunnel shook, hot air blasting past them, burning everything in its path for a moment. The world was only light, noise, and heat, then silence again. They crawled out into another part of the old station, coughing, bruised, covered in ash. Velora looked back, eyes wide. "Did we kill it?" Jack didn't answer right away. He checked his scanner, hoping, praying. The signal was gone. He let out a shaky breath and nodded. "For now," he said. "It's dead." Velora dropped to the floor, exhausted. Her arm was burned, her leg still bleeding, her body aching, but she felt something strange in her chest. Not fear, not anger, something like peace, something like respect. She looked at Jack and said, "You could have left me behind, again and again." He shrugged. "Don't leave people, even proud, stubborn ones?" she asked. He smiled, "Especially those." They both laughed softly for the first time. In the silence that followed, Velora reached into her armor and pulled out a small, glowing crystal. She handed it to him. "This is for saving my life," she said, "and for proving me wrong." Jack stared at the gift, surprised. "What is it?" "Something my people give only to those they trust with their lives." He took it, gently, and nodded. Then his scanner beeped again. He froze, checked it, and frowned. Velora saw his face change. "What is it now?" she asked. Jack's voice was quiet, serious. "That machine," he said. It wasn't the only one. Behind them, deep in the ruins, a second signal woke up, faint, distant, but real, and it was coming online. The sound was soft at first, almost like breathing. But Jack knew it wasn't alive, not in the way normal things lived. He stared at the scanner, then at the glowing wall behind them. The pulse on the screen was steady, slow, and deep underground. Another machine was waking up, and it was older, bigger, and smarter. Velora sat against a broken panel, her arm wrapped in cloth, her eyes tired but alert. She watched Jack's face as the color drained from it. "What is it now?" she asked, already knowing she wouldn't like the answer. Jack looked at her, and his voice was flat. "There's a second unit coming online. Another killer?" She asked. "Worse," he said. "A command unit." She stood up even, though every muscle begged her not to. "If that's true," she said slowly, "then we need to warn my squad." Jack nodded. But there was a bitter edge to his voice. "Assuming any of them are still alive." Velora blinked, her heart suddenly heavy. She had left them to prove herself, to outshine them, to lead. Now she didn't even know if they were breathing. The two of them moved deeper into the station, searching for a working terminal. As they passed shattered walls and melted doors, echoes followed them. Not footsteps dash, just ... Pressure, like the metal itself, remembered pain. They found an old communication room behind a locked hatch. Jack forced it open using his wrist tool, sparks flying as the door screamed against time. Inside, a dusty console blinked, asking for command input. Velora stepped forward and entered her military code. It worked, barely. The screen flickered to life and showed a blinking signal. Her squad's last known position, and it was near the jungle's edge, too close to where the ruins ended and the wild began. She opened a voice channel. Static filled the room. Then one voice, weak, shaky. "Velora? Is that you? We're pinned ... traps everywhere ... Command's gone." Then silence again. She gripped the edge of the console, jaw tight. Jack placed a hand on her shoulder. "We have to go," he said softly. She nodded, but didn't speak. Her face said everything, guilt, fear, and a rising fire she hadn't felt in a long time. They took what weapons they could find. Jack even found a small drone. It floated beside them, scanning ahead, blinking blue. The tunnel out of the ruins was half flooded and cold. It smelled like rust and old blood. Velora led the way this time, limping, but refusing to stop. Above them, the jungle waited. They reached the surface again, and the sun had vanished. The sky was now purple, clouds heavy with heat and energy. Lightning crawled along the horizon like fingers searching for something to burn. In the distance, smoke rose black, thick, and moving fast. "That's your squad," Jack said. Velora didn't answer. She just started running. Her legs screamed with every step, but she ran anyway. Branches slapped her face, thorns tore at her armor, but she didn't slow down. Jack ran beside her, silent, letting her lead this time. She was no longer trying to prove anything. Now she was simply trying to save what was left. They reached the ridge just as the last trap fired. An explosion tore through the ground, tossing bodies into the air. Velora dropped to her knees and screamed, not in pain, but in rage. Below them, 3 soldiers still moved, crawling, covered in mud and blood. Jack didn't wait. He slid down the hill with his rifle drawn. Velora followed, screaming orders as she fired at the auto turrets hidden in the trees. One of them exploded from Jack's shot. Another turned toward him, but Velora threw a rock, just enough to distract it. Then Jack destroyed it with a second blast. They reached the soldiers, pulled them behind cover. One of them, a young alien with wide green eyes, looked up and gasped, "Commander, you came back." Velora's voice cracked. "I should never have left." Suddenly, the ground shook. Far behind them, the jungle split open, and rising from the earth was the command unit, taller than any tree, eyes burning like fire, voice deep like thunder. It scanned the battlefield, saw them, and spoke just 2 words. "Primary target." Velora looked at Jack, her face hard again. "Can we kill that?" Jack stared at the towering machine, his grip tightening. "Not here," he said. "But I know a place we can." And this time, she didn't question him. She just said, "Lead the way, human." It wasn't running, it was chasing the wind. The machine behind them was no longer walking, it was gliding. Its giant limbs didn't stop. They carved through the jungle like blades through paper. The ground didn't shake with its weight. It screamed under it. Leaves turned to ash in its path, and birds fell silent in the trees. Velora didn't look back. She couldn't. One glance might freeze her legs, break her will, or worse make her stop. Jack led the way now, cutting through trees with his plasma blade. Breathing sharp, the wounded soldiers followed behind, struggling, limping, but alive. Just a little further. Jack shouted, voice cracking. Velora didn't ask where. She just trusted him now. She had nothing else left. Her people were dying, her body broken, and a giant weapon from another time wanted her erased. They reached a rock wall, half covered in roots and moss. Jack stopped in front of it and slammed his fist on a hidden panel. The wall split open slowly with a loud hiss, revealing an old entrance. Inside, he shouted, and everyone dove in. The door closed behind them, just as the machine's red eye appeared over the ridge. It didn't stop, it fired. A blast struck the outside wall, sending stone flying into dust, but the hidden structure held. Strong, sealed tight by ancient codes. Inside, it was quiet, too quiet. Flickering lights revealed a forgotten place, curved halls, rusted bulkheads, and strange writing on the walls. This is human tech, Velora said, surprised. Jack nodded. Panting, pre-Exodus facility, he said, back when Earth still mattered. One of the wounded soldiers coughed and slumped against the wall. Velora knelt beside him, pressing a cloth to his wound. He looked up at her, eyes tired. You came back, he whispered. You didn't abandon us. Her throat tightened. Never again, she whispered. Jack moved to the center console and powered it up. The room lit with a soft blue glow. Then a voice spoke from the speakers, calm and mechanical. Welcome, Captain Ray Carter. Access granted. Velora blinked. Captain? Jack winced. Long story, he said. But this station responds to me, and we're going to use it. He tapped the screen, and a map appeared. Dozens of underground tunnels, defense drones, even a fusion core. This place has enough power to destroy a city, he said. If we can trap that thing inside. Velora stood, limping toward the console. Then we end this. She finished his sentence. He looked at her, and for the first time, he saw something in her eyes he hadn't seen before. Not pride. Not stubbornness, but purpose. We'll set the lure, he said. Then draw it into the fusion tunnel. She nodded. We'll need bait. Jack stared at her for a second too long. I'm not letting you die, he said. I'm not planning to, she replied. But I'll be what it follows. Plan was simple and insane. The command unit couldn't be destroyed with guns. Not anymore, but it could be pulled into the narrow tunnel where the fusion core was leaking. Jack would set the charge, and Velora would lure the machine in. She didn't tremble as he handed her the beacon. She only said, "For my people," and walked away. When she reached the exit hatch, she looked up into the stormy sky. The jungle was silent again, but only for a moment. Then she heard it, the sound of war-made legs, slicing trees like they were nothing. The machine saw her, locked on her heat signature, and let out a distorted roar. Velora ran, drawing it away from them. Squad from Jack, from safety, she moved fast despite the pain, guided by rage and duty. Behind her, the metal monster chased, eyes burning red. She passed the old entrance again, and then the trap site. She dove into the fusion tunnel, the beacon blinking wildly in her hand. Jack waited inside, hands shaking as he set the charge. His scanner flashed red target entering. He whispered, "Come on." Just a little closer. The air began to melt around him, the heat from the core rising. The machine stepped into the tunnel, body glowing, voice static filled. "Termination in progress," it said. Velora jumped out of the way, rolling behind a metal pillar. Jack hit the trigger. The tunnel exploded in white light, and everything disappeared. There was no sound, no pain, no time, just light, white, endless, burning light. Then, slowly, came the silence, and after silence, came the breath. Velora opened her eyes. She didn't know how long it had been, seconds, hours, or days. Everything Hurt, but that meant she was alive. The tunnel behind her was gone, reduced to melted stone and twisted metal, and the command unit was nowhere to be seen. Smoke curled into the air like the last sigh of a dying beast. She pushed herself up, limbs trembling, heart racing. "Jack," she whispered. No answer. Her eyes scanned the ruins, broken panels and cracked walls. Then, beneath a half-crushed metal beam, she saw a hand. She ran or limped, or crawled it. Didn't matter. She reached him, pulled at the debris with everything she had left. "Don't you die on me," she growled, voice cracking. She finally uncovered his face, bruised, bloodied, but breathing. Barely his eyes fluttered open. "Unfocused, you okay?" he asked, as if waking from a nap. She laughed, a strange mix of relief and pain. "You idiot," she whispered. "You almost got yourself killed." He tried to smirk. "Worth it." She sat beside him, ignoring her own wounds. "I thought I was the one doing the saving this time," she said. "You did," he replied. Just a little loud. They both stared at the sky above, now calm, clouds drifting like soft shadows. The storm was over, and so was the hunt. Later, when the rescue team arrived, they found the survivors gathered near the edge of the jungle. Velora stood among them, armor scorched, eyes steady. Jack was on a stretcher, hands still gripping the crystal she had given him. The medics tried to take it, but he refused to let go. "It's mine," he mumbled. "She said so." Velora watched him. With a strange smile. Once, she would have called him weak, soft, emotional. Now she knew the truth. Humans weren't weak. They were stubborn, brave, and impossible to forget. Weeks passed, the jungle healed, but the ruins remained buried. No one dared return. The command unit was destroyed. But the jungle never truly gave up its secrets. It only waited. In the base infirmary, Jack opened his eyes to see her standing over him. She had cleaned up, her armor restored. But her eyes, those were different now. She sat beside him, quiet, then said, "Next time you tell me to run, I'll listen." He blinked, smiling weakly. "That's the most shocking thing I've heard all year." She leaned in, and for the first time, rested her forehead gently against his. No words, just breath. She didn't know what humans called it, gratitude, friendship, something more. But whatever it was real. Before she stood to leave, she whispered, "You saved me more than once human." Then she paused and added, "And now I stay by your side." Jack didn't answer. He just held the crystal tighter and smiled. Outside, the stars blinked quietly, and the jungle far away watched them both. But this time, it stayed silent.